Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. In case you're just joining us, we want to talk about the IEBC dilemma. I'm having this conversation with a panel of 4 gentlemen. The Member of Parliament for Suna West constituency, Mheshimiwa Peter Masara. We also have with us Mheshimiwa James Nyikal, the Member of Parliament for Seme constituency. We have with us Honorable Titus Lote, MP Kacheliba constituency, and Dismas Mokua, political risk analyst. And we continue, gentlemen. We are now crossing gears, talking about IEBC. It would be interesting to start with you, Mokua, looking at the big question that people have been asking about whether we have an IEBC. Let's start there. Break it down for us from your understanding of what the IEBC is and whether we have it as it is today, as it stands.
Well, in my understanding, we have an IEBC. What we don't have are the commissioners. And also people have been asking whether it's a legal problem, whether it's a political problem. In my understanding, again, having spoken to subject matter experts, spoken to lawyers, that law is not the issue, the constitution is not the issue. It's a political problem occasioned by the political class. At some stage, IEBC was going to be constituted. The selection committee was in place, but because of political fights from Mr. Raila Odinga, then everything had to come to an abrupt halt to pave way for NADCO. So NADCO came up with a beautiful piece of legislation, and when the process started, again, members of the political class said, wait a minute, we have to stop this process. So a gentleman who wanted to run for that, who wanted to be a member of the selection committee, but was not representing a parliamentary party. He said that I want to be a member of the committee. So he went to court, the matter was dispensed, and then another gentleman still has gone to court. So it appears that, well, the law is very clear. It's a few members of the political class who want to stall the process, and maybe one would understand that Gen Z wanted to recall some members of parliament. Maybe if you've got an IEBC, some of them may be recalled. Maybe we need to have a referendum. Maybe if you've got an IEBC, it's going to be recalled. But now looking at the bigger picture, when you don't have an IEBC in place, it's like you are flying blind as a nation. And I think failure to have an IEBC is a threat to national security. If you don't have an IEBC, it means that very soon we are going to have a political instability in Kenya. Very soon we are going to have economic instability in Kenya, and very soon we are going to have security instability in Kenya. Then when that happens, then the economy will start bleeding. We may lose our position as an FDI destination, because for the international investors, when they want to invest in a place, they look at economic stability, political stability, and security stability. All those are borne by IEBC, because IEBC is the one which guarantees a free, fair, predictable election. Yeah, so this is something which needs to be treated as emergency. And the Kenya Kwanza administration has been working hard, doing economic diplomacy for the last 2 years, positioning Kenya as an FDI destination. But if you're positioning Kenya as an FDI destination, and yet your fundamentals are not addressed, that would pose a crisis. Like now when you talk about, say, positioning Kenya within EAC, recently you had a group called Amsons coming from Tanzania. They want to come and invest in the cement industry, putting 400 million. And 400 million in Kenya, that is going to be huge FDI. Now, there are many other investors who want to come and do the same thing, but they're waiting to see, wait a minute, if you don't have IEBC today, what is going to happen? You recall during the impeachment of...
So we don't have an IEBC, that's what you're saying? No,
you have an IEBC, but that cannot deliver an election. Yeah, well, you remember during the impeachment...
Just wanted to get you clear.
Yeah, you remember during the impeachment, people are saying that the reason why Professor Kithure Kindiki needed to be in office as a matter of urgency is that in case a vacancy occurs in the office of the president, then we'd get into a crisis.
Right.
So every rational Kenyan knows that IEBC, as constituted today without the commissioners, may not deliver on the full mandate
of
IEBC, yeah, right, of the commission. But also the responsible officers have decided to give it a blind eye, and they're happy with the status quo, right, which is unacceptable.
Lotte, what do you think? Because it seems like it's an emergency. The country is risks being plunged into in fact, we are in a constitutional crisis, because matters like the boundary review ought to have happened. We have constituencies that have been waiting for their elected representatives for several months or so. This is something that many say should have happened like yesterday. Why doesn't it seem like an emergency from where you're sitting?
Safin, I think it is very sad for us to operate as a country without an IEBC. That is the arbiter in this country. And for every democracy, we should have an arbiter. We're supposed to midwife elections. We're supposed to monitor on how parties are operating. IEBC is a very critical item if states are items in our management of our state. The problem has actually been there, and it is political. Many Kenyans will ask, what is the reason why we do not have an IEBC? And the question will always be answered only by the politicians. Because, like he says, it's very critical. There are people that are sitting onto this thing and that they do not want the IEBC to be in place probably because of the fear of recall, probably because of the fear of referendum. But we are going towards an election in 2027, which is not very far from now. We are in a political crisis. Because if you look at Article 89 of the Constitution about the creation of boundaries, it says that it should be done periodically in a period not less than 8 years and a period not more than 12 years. Already we are past the 12-year period. Anything that is gone out of the Constitution is a constitutional crisis. So we have passed the 12-year period, which we shall have review our boundaries. And so we are already in a political, constitutional crisis. And nobody seems to care. And Kenyans are asking, what is the reason why we do not have an IEBC? I think when we sat down at the NADCO, one of the items was about the creation of the selection panel. And that is where the problem is. Who is supposed to select the commissioners? Because the commissioners are the ones that are supposed to manage the elections. And everybody is very afraid. They want to have the people that are very responsible or responsive to them. So that selection panel has always been a thorn in the flesh. I think we need to go to the public participation that we so want to talk about. Probably even have people's names selected so that we have the selection panel and have our country run. Otherwise, I have seen Marjan, the CEO of the IEBC, has gone to courts to seek for an interpretation as to whether the commission, without the commissioners, can do the boundary review, because he knows we are in a constitutional crisis.
I like your choice of word, responsible versus responsive. And Mheshimiwa Nikal, this is where you come in, because from my understanding, there was a legal selection panel in office until the recommendations of, the NADCO happened. Is IEBC a political problem or a legal problem from where you sit?
You know, I said earlier, what is the relationship between politics and the welfare of people? Politicians are actually elected to manage affairs of people. There are people who actually know how to do that. They are called professionals. So the politicians give them direction and support them. And that's where the problem always is. When the politicians, because they have a more apparently higher power, don't let professionals do things, then the reality of life, which lies with professionals, comes on them. As we are now, we are actually in a crisis. In fact, it's just that you don't know how to punish a country. I don't know who can punish a country in total, because 8 years have passed and we have not done it. And then if we were to do it now, the
last time it happened was in 2012.
Yeah, the boundary review. And even if you were to do it now, you remember, you should do it and complete at least 1 year before the next election. The way we are moving, even if we were to start now, I wish you will finish it before the next election. On top of that, there are constituencies, there are wards that are actually vacant. Now, those people are not represented, so they are losing out. I think we should move and get that thing done.
But how did we get here? Because, like I said, we had a selection panel, and then this whole process of NADCO began. Were we looking for a responsible IEBC that will serve its constitutional mandate, or were we looking for a responsive IEBC that will answer to the interests of certain people within the political circle, from your analysis?
From my analysis, first, we must understand that when we are talking about constitution, Kenya is a multi-party democracy. So the first selection panel, if you look at it, it was not reflecting the issue of multi-party democracy, because the way it was selected, it was biased. That's why the NADCO came in. So we don't want to blame the NADCO. The NADCO was doing what must be done. We were talking about public participation. You cannot allow somebody you are going to compete with to select those who are going to appoint the referees. It means you have lost the game from day one. So what is happening is that we are in a crisis, but the actual word is that we lack what is called political goodwill, because all these things need political goodwill. Whoever is in power must know that this is what the Constitution wants and what the country wants. The country wants everybody to be included in an inclusive system of even IEBC. You know, we just don't need an IEBC. We need an IEBC which can serve the people of Kenya. We want an IEBC which, when they announce results, the majority, not everybody can accept results, but majority of Kenyans will accept the results. That's why the process must have a political goodwill. All players must be involved, because, you know, IEBC is not about selecting students joining university or people being employed. IEBC is about election. Boundaries are about power. Election is about power. So we are talking about power here.
Are you suggesting that joining university or employment is
that need professionals, because your papers will carry the day.
All right.
But for election, there are so many dynamics. If the commissioners are already against you, or they were selected by your opponent, will you expect them to serve the interests of another person? The answer is no. When the selection panel are selected by an active player, for example, I'm coming from Suna West. If you give me opportunity to appoint the returning officer, I can give even my wife to be the returning officer, because she's going to favor me. So there must be a criteria. And we are looking for a criteria which will serve the interests of the majority, not minority. You know, public interest supersedes individuals' interests. So in this case, once elections are done, that one, 2022 was done. Now people are focused on 2027. 2027, who are the players? The Constitution dictates that is a multi-party, so we can have even 100 political parties. How can we take into account the interests of these 100 political parties? We must look at a way where we may not satisfy everybody, but at least somebody will say this is better. That's why the NADCO report was very important. Actually, I can say for now, the stalemate is all about political goodwill.
All right. Moko, what do you think? Because in the aftermath, there's been issues that have been raised with regards to the selection panel that was proposed. There are two cases with regards to the concerns about that. From your perspective, do you think the legal battle is justifiable? Because this is what many say is delaying the process. Is it justifiable, or is it a well-orchestrated plan to delay, you know, the process for the individual people to just get their interests passed through IEBC?
Having established that it's not a legal problem, then we know it's a political problem.
It's not a legal problem.
It cannot be, because the legal framework is very solid. Even before Mr. Raila Odinga decided to go to the streets and complain about the selection committee and the entire composition, there was a piece of legislation that had been passed into law, and President Ruto merely assented to a piece of legislation which went through the National Assembly, where the 3 members are seats. So they actually debated the piece of legislation and they passed it. Then you get the NADCO report, which came up with a set of beautiful ideas. Again, it was passed. The selection committee was, the members were doing press-ups, ready to go. But one of their own, who knows that he has no capacity nor competence and it does not fit within the legal framework, says, wait a minute, my rights have been violated. They go to court. And then as soon as the matter is settled, another one crawls from the woodwork, says, wait a minute, I've got objections. So there's a very high probability that these people will keep on coming with objections till the cow's home. And you remember what Kriegler told us about preparing for elections, on the need of IBC having systems, having predictable systems for unpredictable outcomes. So as Honorable Masara has indicated, that when IBC pronounces a winner, even when you have lost, you know that in fact you've lost, you go home.
Fairly.
So that you cannot start manipulating the populace. Because right now with
But
the
how realistic is that, judging by our election history? You know, will it ever come to a day when actually the losers will go home and say we lost fairly?
Yeah.
Will we ever have that?
Of course. You know, one of the reasons why our elections in Kenya are probably the most expensive in the world is because everything has been cast into iron. The legal framework is very solid. At some stage, we'll even come up with a regulation on how the returning officers are supposed to be dressing, how they're supposed to be breathing, because of what Masara indicated as the trust deficit. The trust deficits are very low. I understand in other countries, in more mature democracies, the equivalent of IBC, it's volunteers. That an election is not a public holiday. People go work in the morning, they go, they vote in the middle of the day. You don't have policemen all over guarding ballots because of people know that what an election is all about. But in Kenya, it's very, it becomes a mess. And every 5 years, you tend to have tensions 1 year before an election and 1 year after an election. And coming from a business perspective, I interact with a lot of investors. What they find as a unique selling proposition in Kenya is our elections that we have every 5 years. They say that with all the challenges we have, at least we get a new set of leaders every 5 years through a democratic process. But now the challenge is that some of those who lose, who are well known, because of their high capacity to convince Kenyans, they say, wait a minute, this election was not free, fair, nor credible. And you know, this thing is not limited to Kenya. In the US election, Mr. Donald Trump had indicated that if he doesn't win, he will not accept the outcome. But as soon as he was declared the winner, he said probably this is the most peaceful election we've ever had. So, you know, you have many global examples. But as someone who works with investors in Kenya, the reason why they want to come to Kenya is because after having a peaceful election, then you are guaranteed of this political stability, economic stability, and security stability. Some of our neighbors have got something which appears that there is stability. But you know, the pillars, the systems are very weak. And I recall at some stage you said that we need to give examples. I'll go back to this investor from Tanzania who wants to come to Kenya. You see, one investor is coming with 400 million USD. Amsons. You'll get another one coming with 200 million USD. If you had an IBC in place, the one which can do elections, it means that you inspire investor confidence, and Kenya Kwanza will be able to deliver on its mandate on wealth creation and job creation. There are some investors whose appetite for risk is a bit low. So now they're waiting in the wings saying, let's see how this IBC is going to be constituted. Yeah, so for me, I think if you want to invite and have all these investors coming to Kenya, let's have that IBC constituted as a matter of urgency. I don't know whether the members of the National Assembly can actually give maybe go do another amendment and say that you will not keep on frustrating this selection committee day in, day out, because right now there is that probability that right now we are told that we are about 52 million Kenyans. So there will be a Kenyan every day, even after the current matter is sorted out, another one will come out and another one will come out. So at the end of the day, we'll be staring at August 2027 with the commissioners who are wet behind their ears and they have no idea how to conduct an election.
Doctor, what do you think? This public interest that should override this whole dilemma of IEBC, is it really the issue, or there are things that we are not being told about the delays that we're experiencing with regards to the IEBC quagmire?
Well, I don't think there's anything that we are not being told. Everybody out there knows that this is a referee, and we've actually seen some of the matches out there where referees are beaten because they seem to be biased. And I think the biasness is what nobody wants. Kenyans wants to have an independent referee called the IEBC, but then how they come into office is the problem. How they come into office is the problem, because the selection panel, like I said before, are the ones that are responsible in bringing them into office. And everybody is jittery, because election is a matter of life and death in this country. Basically, because the winner takes it all. The person that loses nearly goes home hungry, and the person that gets nearly goes home with everything. And so everybody wants to get it. And so they want to have referees that are biased. I want to talk about what I said initially, responsive and responsible. Every politician wants to have a responsive arbiter, they are referee, but not the responsible one. And yet Kenyans want a responsible
so
arbiter.
there is conflict of...
There's the conflict of how they come in. And I think, like you say, we are a country that litigates a lot. Everybody will actually complain about everything. So for me, my suggestion will be, let us go ahead and close our eyes. Let us put politicians out of the selection panel. Let Kenyans have another way of selecting the people that are going to bring in the referee. But if politicians are the ones, and unfortunately everything in this country revolves around politics, if they are the ones that are supposed to bring in the selection panel, this selection panel will continually be frustrated. And when we continually frustrate this selection panel, I'm afraid the 2027 election might be held or actually run by commissioners that might not be well versed to run an election. And we might then complain of not having good commissioners. So I think as early as today, if it is possible, let everything else be shut, and that we bring in the selection panel and that we have IEBC in place. There are constituencies, unfortunately, that have no MPs.
Banisa.
Yeah, Banisa. From last year, actually, how do we expect this constituency to be represented? And yet it is their right to be represented in Parliament. Who represents them? Are we not even sympathizing with them? And including wards. For how long will we continue like this and just thinking that everything is okay? It is wrong for us as a country to stay without an IEBC. It is wrong for us to politics around issues to deal with the IEBC.
So the issue has been sort of like politicized, that's what you're saying?
Yes.
What do you say about the residents of Banisa in Mandera, Ugunja in Siaya County, who do not have an MP following their MP becoming a CS, that is Opiyo Wandayi? There's Magarini constituency where election was nullified in May 2024 by the Supreme Court, and several wards that still are waiting for the by-elections to take place after several seats were left vacant due to several other reasons. What do you say about the residents of these regions, Mheshimiwa Nyikal, when it comes to the constitutionally protected right to representation? You're an MP and you know what your residents benefit from you being there.
I had said earlier, that's the greatest injustice communities can serve. Because I know how lobbying occurs if you want anything done. And you need your representative to lobby for you. Even mobilizing people to do things, you need these representatives to mobilize people. Those constituencies, people are suffering right from the ground all the way up to Parliament because they're not represented. Even how they are using, for example, the constituencies, how their CDFs are being used, although directly CDF can be used without MPs because it's not them to give direction. But they will mobilize the people on what do we need, what do these people need to do for us with the money that they have. So all these things, definitely we can't ask whether it is good or bad. It's bad, that is for sure. But what this brings to me is the strength of our institutions to protect the Constitution and the people. Because if you look at it, the three of us here as MPs can say we have done our job, we have finished. Now, the matter is being frustrated in court. And we believe that even though it is court, there is politics behind it that is doing this. But then we ask,
so still
is this the strength of our institution? If they keep coming, is this not now an abuse of the court process?
Absolutely.
And are the courts able to very quickly say, this is an important matter, we have had this, we have had this, we are not, we can say, we legally, and they know the processes of stopping the abuse. Because now this is an abuse of court to actually frustrate the whole country. So now I'm asking, if the politicians can quickly say it's not part of us, because as Parliament, we have passed it. Now it is a matter of the court. And then people can say, those are individual Kenyans who are now going. But then, who then protects Kenyans from ill-motivated individuals? And I think now the court should see this, as very urgent, look critically, whoever is coming, as Mr. Mukwa was saying, another guy will come. If you encourage them, anybody who comes, you listen, there must be a way of the courts knowing when the process is being abused and stop it for the benefit of of the country.
Of the country. Masara, what is your diagnosis of where the problem is and how best do you think we should...
Actually, now the ball is in the court of the Chief Justice. Actually, the Supreme Court are the people are supposed to protect the Constitution and interpret it as well. They are very much aware we're in a constitution crisis because when we cannot elect members of parliament, the boundary review cannot be done. It's incumbent of the court system now to come and help this country. But I want to take you back. You mentioned that will we ever come to a place where after the election everybody will accept? In 2002, when President Kibaki was elected, there was no contest. Actually, the whole country, that's the single time when we got the goodwill of everybody, including investors, everybody. In 2007, I want to take you through this journey. Kibaki was was sworn in at night. And even the referee by then declared that he didn't know who won. It is in records. In 2017, the courts nullified the presidential election because of a bad referee. But what happened? The person who presided over an election which was nullified by the court has now been given a job. In a mature democracies, when you interfere, and remember the amount of money, the losses this country made because of 2017 nullified election. There were 2 elections. The cost, its cost itself, how the economy suffered. Such a person should not be given a job. That's why we must get it right now by selecting good commissioners who can bring in the trust of the public after the election. Whichever way we want to put it, the Chief Justice now must come out and form a panel of judges which can fast-track all these cases. If there are 100, they can work even on Saturday and Sundays, even at night, so that within a short period of time, they can be concluded. If they do this, even those who wanted to frustrate the process through court will fear. They will shrink because they know even if they take it to court, within 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they'll be solved. So the Chief Justice must come out because executive have done their part. They conceded to the request of the NADCO. They reconstituted the selection panel. We, Parliament, we have played our role by enacting a law. Now, the ball is in the court of the judiciary. Let them fast-track all the cases so that we can have, this thing, we can have IEBC by March. Because if all the cases are concluded within December, by January, we do what is called the interviews. By February, we have commissioner. They are being sworn in March. Then we can do the boundary, whatever. Review. And then we can do by-elections. So I'm humbly appealing to the judiciary of this country that please don't put this country in a quagmire position. We have only one country, and it's called Kenya. And history will judge each and every one of us, not only when you are alive, even if you have died. I believe all of us here are Christian. If you read at the book of Esther, Esther 4, Mordecai is talking to Esther, that you are placed there. Don't think if you don't want to salvage us, you will be saved. If you don't salvage us, you and the entire generation will perish, but God will provide somebody else to salvage this country. So the judiciary need to know that that book of Esther was not just written for some other people. It is now applicable to Kenya. Let Chief Justice know that she's not in that office because of the privileges there. She was put there with a purpose to save the country, especially during such a time.
All right. The biblical analogy to this was, what do you think? I'd like to agree with you to a certain extent. In this country, we've seen even Parliament ban the midnight oil to get certain things done. We've seen courts sit even during the weekends to push things if things have to happen, like yesterday. Why does it seem like this is not moving? And now seems like the blame is being shifted to the judiciary. The question is, why doesn't it seem like these cases are going the way they should? Do you think it's that easy for the judiciary to act as it is being challenged to do so? Talking
about shifting blames, the judiciary would say that the members of the National Assembly and Senate are the ones who came up with a piece of legislation that was not bulletproof. They'll also shift the blame to the National Assembly. They should have said that you should have captured clauses that will prevent special interest groups or cartels from frustrating the process. And then the executives will say, we gave you a draft piece of legislation, the National Assembly should have done your bit. So if you start shifting those goalposts and blame, we'll do it till the cows come home. But you know, human beings respond to essentially two things, the pain and pleasure. So where is the pain in this conversation and where is the pleasure in this conversation? And my suggestion would be that maybe somebody needs to move the courts, because as Honorable Masara has indicated, the Chief Justice on her own motion, she will not wake up one day in the morning and say that now we are going to constitute a panel. I don't know whether it's within the High Court or the Supreme Court, wherever it's going to be. Somebody has to move the court. So it would be interesting to establish whether or not actually that moving this court is within the Attorney General's mandate, so that she can actually do it on behalf of the people of Kenya. Because as we stand right now, another gentleman will go to court very soon and say that the people of Banisa, their constitutional rights have been violated. So I want to also file a case. And then they'll say the matter is going to be mentioned maybe 24th of December next year. And then, you know, these things are drag. Now, the members of the National Assembly and Senate were able to kick Rigathi Gachagua in a record space of time. So if they consider IEBC as an emergency, they can do that. They can even have a gazette notice. They can even work on the 24th, 25th of December and 1st of January. But because the status quo serves their selfish interest, they're happy to go to Madagascar or Mauritius on vacation and then start shifting these goalposts. So it appears at this stage, Morai is on her own.
Morai is on her own, and that's a very unfortunate, you know, statement. I haven't gotten your thoughts also on the same issue of representation, Lotte. If you look at what the Constitution provides in the right to representation, you may borrow from your constituency as well and look at what could be happening elsewhere in those regions that still lack their representatives. What is at stake? What are they losing, you know, as we speak today? And probably what do you think should be done in the interim as we wait for the blame games and the dilemma that we still do not understand to be addressed?
Every constituency, every ward that is not represented is losing a lot. And especially in a country like Kenya, where representation is key, where resource allocation is also probably becomes as a result of how you can be able to lobby. Unfortunately, I'll say this. If you look at the way resources are given out in this country, and especially the resources that are within the ministries, most of the resources sometimes go towards where the leaders are coming from. So that if I come from Central Kenya, I sit in the budget committee, probably I am the CEO of roads, I find that most of the resources are channeled towards my area. And so for the constituencies that do not have people sitting in those positions, the member of parliament then represent them in parliament by asking questions if he doesn't, or he or she doesn't get resources going to his area. So in an area like Banisa, who talks on behalf of the people of Banisa? Now we've got time where we ask cabinet secretaries questions that are specific to our areas where we come from. Who asks questions on behalf of these people? Who goes to the ministries to ask for resources to be channeled to these areas? So this area is losing big because there is nobody that represents them. There's nobody that talks about their interest. And I think we will always continue. And I said this democracy, and the reason why I said I agree 100% with Junet Mohammed. This democracy, where we allow everything to be subjected to discussion, might hurt this country. The reason why IEBC's selection panel is not in place is because somebody went to court. It is in a legal process now. And even when we unravel that, immediately we are about to start. Somebody else, out of the 56 million Kenyans, can still go back to court and say, I'm aggrieved on this. And it goes back to court.
Which is not wrong.
It will then go, it will continue like this.
Is it wrong? Because
it is not wrong, but too much of it, too much of it is wrong. And even the Bible says too much of something is poison. Everything that you do beyond some levels is wrong. Kenyans are now totally litigants. Everybody is a litigant, including a small child. If you want to beat your child now, I'll tell you, I'll take you to court because the law does not allow you to beat me as a father or a mother. So we have abused this process, and we will continue abusing this process. The reason why sometimes we have to reach a point where we say it's a bit of dictatorship. It needs to take place so that we move forward as a country. Some bit of dictatorship. This is my personal view. It's not a Kenyan view. Because we will always find ourselves in this quagmire where somebody else pulls out a curse, another person brings in. And the courts will continue agreeing and receiving because the courts are allowed to receive any complaint from anybody and take it through the process. And yet this process of selection and this process of having IEBC commissioners does not wait for us to finish this court. The time is ticking. Every single day it was an election, and we need the commissioners. Will we continue entertaining Kenyans in court? Will we continue entertaining people who are just there to show their names and to ensure that they are seen at the expense of this country? We need to reach a point where we say, no, we cannot continue abusing the process. I think the process is being abused, the court issues is being abused, so that there's nothing that moves on in this country.
Nikal, I'm coming to you, but you wanted to respond to the bit of dictatorship as
Yes. Honorable Oche was elected through a democratic process.
Public participation.
Yeah, public participation. And he knows that the 2010 Constitution made Kenya a democracy. There is no room for dictatorship.
Even a bit of...
There's no room for dictatorship. There's even a euphemism being used elsewhere that we need a benevolent dictatorship. That one is unacceptable. Now, if for some reason Honorable Oche finds that the Kenyan Constitution, the process being abused, he's got a unique responsibility because his voters, one of the responsibilities they've given him is lawmaking. Let him come up with a proposed legislation or a piece of legislation to immunize this IEBC process from special interest groups or cartels. Or maybe we can adopt the American model whereby maybe if a senator is not in office for some reason, then the state governor is given an opportunity. Maybe that's something we can explore in Kenya, that instead of going to have a by-election, you allow the local governor to nominate somebody, then who becomes an MP or an MCA.
All right, Nika.
Okay, we can make laws. But what worries me about this country is when people seek and hold high positions. Is there something that is actually driving them that they want to do for the society that makes them seek that position? Because if we have many people who seek positions either for the name, the fame, or the material benefit, then we are doomed. We are now saying that somebody needs to say move the judiciary. I think if you have a mandate and you can see this before you, if you had a higher motive, you will say, as I see this thing, within my mandate, this thing is hurting the country. I am therefore going to move. Now, it links with what Honorable Ote is saying. It's not dictatorship, it's initiative. Now,
it's the wording that is
I want to distinguish because you are motivated. You want something you want to do for the country. If you are doing it by force, it is dictatorship. But that is why we now have laws and systems, so that the initiative you have can be now channeled through the legal system, so that it works under procedures that are in place. Nobody stopped from dreaming something good to do for the country. It's just, okay, it's a nice thing, but this is how we do it. What I see lacking, and I'm not only seeing it at high level, you see it even people who are employed in jobs. People seem to be just earning a salary, but not actually doing the job. You don't see the pride that I got this done, and therefore I'm going to move this to be done. I think what Honorable Mathara was saying, if the court is being abused, the court process is being abused, do we need somebody else to come out and say the court process is now being abused? I think the mandate of the judicial system itself is to see for themselves, put before them, they also understand what is going in the country. They are part of the process. So if it is being abused...
Would that be termed judicial dictatorship?
It is not dictatorship. No, I've told you.
No.
I've told you, what removes the dictatorship element is when you have made the decision that this is what is good for the country and I'm going to do it. It is still within your knowledge and your mandate to say, what process gives me this power to do this and use that?
Safin, just to come
so
in.
Let's say, we were now saying, the Honorable Masara was saying, he's calling upon the Chief Justice to see if they can set a panel, and he's wondering who will move the Chief Justice. If there is a process for putting up these panels, and we have seen many panels being put up of judges, who normally moves them?
There must be a petitioner.
Yeah, so
the High Court.
I think there are processes that can take place.
Dr. Njikal, on this issue of dictatorship, you have said it's motivation. Even what we are all agreeing that there should be a point where we stop everything. Even now, when we say that the courts are being abused and that we need to have legislation or a process that will stop that abuse. And probably one of the processes is to say, if there are 5 litigants on a particular matter, the 6th one should not come. That by itself is a dictatorship, because why are you barring the 6th person? So I'll tell you, there should be a point where we put a stop to this thing. And a point where we put a stop to this thing is what we now call it dictatorship.
I'm very clear. I'm very clear even that on dictatorship. Let's start from where I said. Who brought the concept of government? Where did the concept of government come from?
The people.
The people decided that we would want to live like this and we'll do our things like this. As it develops, structures in place, laws are in place, executive structures are created, legal structures are created. So we create that. But the basic thing is we wanted to agree. So in the bigger picture, it comes election. So if a new thing comes that you want, putting the law to make sure that the court is not abused, that, once the people agreed with it, is not dictatorship. At this particular point in Kenya, why, even if you say that, Mr. Mukwa is very right, but it is a longer process. We have something waiting to be done. We can't go back to...
We should be done as soon as...
My
so
question,
at that point,
just a moment.
As far as I see it now, I think the court should make decision that this thing is urgent, it needs to be done. When Parliament decided it is urgent, we want to impeach. They didn't have...
They did it almost. They were not pushed.
So the court
come.
What I can say is very simple. And we need not to debate that we can't have dictatorship in Kenya. It's not anywhere in our constitution, because our constitution is supreme. We must work within the confines of the constitution. You ask about who can move the courts. The Administrative Law 1 and 2 dictates that the holder of an office has a mandate of making the right decision. And you can be taken to court for failing to make the right decision.
All right.
Because even if we have 20 litigants, after elections, the petition are being dispensed of within 6 months. Who moves the court? Who moves the court?
There's a legal framework for that.
Yes. The legal framework is these cases must be heard. You can take, judges work with the diary. The judiciary can sit over a cup of tea and decide that because they put the country first, we are going to have a crisis. How do we handle these cases against selection panel? Then they decide that any case which comes before you, deal with it within 1 week or 2 weeks. Do you need a law for that?
It is within the mandate.
It is within the Administrative Law 1 and 2. You don't need to be moved. It is, for example, when you are now in charge of how you operate, when you see me doing wrong thing, do you need your director to tell you? You can make a decision. Already you've been given the mandate. The Chief Justice has been...
doing a wrong thing.
No, just a moment. The Chief Justice has been given the mandate constitutionally to run the legal issues and courts of our country. It is incumbent of them, and I'm repeating biblically, I think that's not mine. It's God who has sent the Holy Spirit so that I can speak with Chief Justice. That let her read Esther 4. Esther 4 is very relevant to the circumstances we are now. You are placed somewhere, You must make decision on behalf of the people. Let me ask you, President Ruto cannot make that decision now. Wetangula in charge of the parliament cannot make that decision now. That decision now lies with the Chief Justice.
All right, well said, gentlemen. Let me just allow us to comment quickly on something else as we wind up this program. I want us to hear sound bites from the Suna East MP, Junet Mohammed, and CSOP Wandai on the issue of, the role of the opposition in, holding government accountable. As it stands today, the gentlemen seem to be agreeing that there's nothing to criticize as they pledge their support for President William Ruto. This is what they had to say.
Mheshimiwa Rais, sisi kama watu wa Azimio, kwanza mimi ndio kiongozi ya upinzani hapa Kenya kikatiba, kwa sababu mimi ndio minority leader. Wale watu wanatembea hapa kando kando wanasema ati hao na upinzani, hawa ni watu fake. Upinzani ni mimi, na mtu asichukue kazi yangu tafadhali. Hiyo ndio ile kazi Mungu amenipatia, tafadhali waachie mimi kazi yangu. So Your Excellency, mimi wakati wa uchaguzi watu wetu wa Azimio na walikuwa na manifesto. Watu yako pia walikuwa na manifesto. Watu walikuwa wanasema wanataka kujenga manyumba, low cost housing. Watu walikuwa wanataka kusema ati wanataka kufanya industry kama hii unafungua jana. Watu walikuwa wanasema wanataka kufanya electrification. Na saa hii mimi naona hizo ndio inafanyika. Sasa tutapinga ya nini? Kama kazi inafanyika, tunaweza kupinga kweli? Tunangoja ya kupinga. Bado haijapatikana. Tunangoja ya kupinga. Kwa sababu kama manifesto yetu ilikuwa inasema tujenge manyumba na zinajengwa. Tulikuwa tunasema sitima iunganishwe na inafanywa. Tuseme tujenge industries na inajengwa. Sasa bado hajapata kitu ya kupinga. Ndio mimi nangoja kama mpinzani kitu ya kupinga.
Kama mjuavyo, Mheshimiwa Rais amefungua ukurasa mpya wa uongozi katika nchi yetu, si ndio? Ndio sababu ameweka serikali ya broad based. Sisi kule kwetu, mimi natoka kule Nyanza. Kule kwetu, si mnafahamu? Kule kwetu tumekuwa tukitembea na nyinyi pamoja, si ndio? Sisi kule kwetu tumeamua ya kwamba tunafanya kazi na Mheshimiwa Rais, tunamuunga mkono kwa njia yoyote. Leo, kesho na milele.
Mheshimiwa Nyikal, is ODM now fully in government?
Look, you see, we must go back to the principles. The constitution we have today, what does it is a presidential system, so that the executive is the executive, and parliament, whichever side they belong, should actually oversight and must oversight the executive. That is why you see, like in this case, when we had people in ODM and they were appointed ministers, they must relinquish their positions in ODM and be in the executive. Now, as far as I'm concerned, ODM is intact. And as part of parliament, we must point out what is not right.
ODM is intact. That's not in question.
Yes.
The Azimio issue would be in question, but that's a topic for another day.
Yes.
But is it in government, ODM, as intact as it is?
As a party. Do you realize that in government, in reality, you shouldn't say, you can't use the word your parties in government. Because even the party that is said to be ruling, those MPs, when they're in parliament, are actually supposed to oversight the government. And that is why we actually have a problem. That is my worry. In that parliament, we now seem to say, if things come from the government, then UDA members think that they now must pass them, whether they are good or bad. That is the problem. Even UDA members must say that this is not right. And therefore, we ODM must say that thing is right. So and let me tell you, and I want to say again, when people are talking in a rally, there are also something you must distinguish. I want you to do this. No, very, very seriously. And it's a problem we're having in the country. When you are seeking votes, the process is totally different from running a government. When Honorable Pio and I is talking there, as a politician, do you really see that he's also carrying his position of cabinet? When he's going to operate as a cabinet person, he must now operate very, very differently. If he doesn't, it will bring a problem. And even me and Masara will we'll call him to task and say, no, Honorable Wandai, you cannot do, Waziri Wandai, you cannot do that.
So there's nothing to oversight?
No.
We must oversight.
You say we must.
Yeah, and we
just a moment.
By what they're saying.
Just a moment.
There's nothing to oversight.
No. Let me answer that. Let me answer that. Even when Junet, because I think this applies more to Junet now than even to Wandai, because Wandai is not in a position to oversight anything. He's the one to be oversighted now. But it is, Junet, even when Junet says there's nothing to oppose, we wanted houses, we wanted this, now these are there, what are we opposing? Let me tell you, the truth is this. When we go and sit with him and we think even the implementation of those houses are not proper, we in ODM will call him up. I will call him up.
I'm a member of ODM. We are not in government. Opiyo Wandayi, for him to be a cabinet minister, he resigns from being a member of ODM. He does not have membership number. So he was speaking as a cabinet minister. But remember his background. He was from ODM and he's from Nyanza. You can't dispute that. When Junet was talking about we still don't have what to oppose, but we are looking for it, we are giving, you must give credit where it deserves. We are giving the government time to work. But remember, this issue of being government, people don't misinterpret it. We have three arms of government. We have the executive, the legislative arm of government, and then the judiciary. So all of us, the judges, the MPs, are in government, but our roles are different. I'm in government as a legislator. Then in the legislative aspect, we have the minority and the majority. I'm in the side of the minority. When the executive are not doing their good thing, remember, you can check the records here when I was saying the government messed when they are rushing their policies. That is now oversighting the government. I'm telling them not to rush their policies. I'm telling them to do the public participation. Right. That is oversighting the government as a member of parliament for Suna West. But let me say this finally. As a country, we should not only be moved to do things. People need to put this country first because we don't have another country. This is the time when we need patriotic Kenyan, whether in the judiciary or wherever, to make the right decision that can move this country forward for the future generation.
All right. Peter Masara, well said. That is the Member of Parliament for Suna West constituency. Unfortunately, I have to wind this down. And of course, we've been having this conversation with James Nyikal, MP Seme constituency, Titus Lote Asante, the Member of Parliament for Kacheliba constituency, and Dismas Mokua, political risk analyst. Of course, like we always say it, on the state of the nation, we never conclude. We just put a comma. And these are matters we should be picking up as they continue to develop in our country. That's how we wrap it up. We will be shifting gears into the social hour as we talk about the dynamics in modern day dating, a panel that will interest you on how best you can be able to navigate and, of course, just bringing out the complexities of this modern day environment is coming up shortly. But for now, we take a break.